here, you guys. It is September. I think everybody is officially back to school, and I'm glad you're here. The Mastering Social Media for Schools podcast. We come at you every single week with an episode that talks about school communication, the best practices for social media. And today is a little bit unique because we have Dr. Jordan Ziemer and Kaitlin Paonessa, and they are sharing their journey into school PR and to talk about the struggles, the strategies to deal with it, the transition, all of the things. We get deep. This is an episode that is going to be good for your soul. And I know you're looking at the length and you're like, whoa, Andrea, this is a long conversation. But you guys are not going to want to miss it. You're probably going to want to listen to it twice. So both Jordan and Kaitlin, they are in a district in Abilene that has about 14,000 students. They're going to talk about each of their journeys into school PR because both of them didn't necessarily start there. They're going to give some advice if you're thinking or if you're just getting started. They've got some really great advice. And then they're going to talk deep about the struggles that they still have in their role and provide some tips on how to overcome them. Also, just if you are not in a great supportive environment in regards to work-life harmony, work-life balance, Jordan's going to end the episode with some really solid advice of how do you have those conversations and kind of advocate for yourself. This is truly a very special episode. One where we talk a lot about community, and a lot about just reaching out to your network and getting support. And just if you need additional support, I just want to remind you that my membership group is here. Okay. It's an online group. We meet every week. We have something live happening, but it's a great place to ask questions, get ongoing professional development, and get resources. So we have hundreds of trainings that are available. And coming up next month, in the month of October, we do our social media boot camp that is only available to members. Okay. It's a 4-week foundational course of how to run social media for your school. So whether you've been doing it for a month or whether you've been doing it for 15 years, I think there's a right and wrong kind of strategy that's going to help you thrive in your role. And social media can't be your only job, but it's part of your job. And so how do we set up the foundation? And that's what we do in that 4-week course. So membership is open. Okay. So jump on over to my website, socialschool4edu.com. Click on the membership service and you can learn more about it. All right. Now, before we get into the episode, I always start with a K-12 PR tip. Let's get to that. All right. Today's K-12 PR tip. Sometimes you get content from staff members or community members that they want you to share on social media, and they're a little blurry, they're a little bad. I got this tip from our social media for schools retreat, which actually you're going to be able to sign up. Okay. And so you're going to want to check that out. Our kind of exclusive in-person retreat coming up in June of 2026. But this tip, I can't remember who shared it, so I can't give credit. So I'm sorry. But they said you can take a bad photo and you can actually blur it a little more and then maybe add a single word over it. So the photo actually becomes the background. Okay. And so you can use the image, but you're using it in a different way. So maybe it isn't the greatest picture of some kids out on the playground, but maybe you're able to take it and just create a little word across it to say, hey, announcement or check this out. And maybe the caption is going to say more words, but obviously you're able to use the image. So just sharing that, I thought that was a brilliant tip. Sometimes we just use a blurry picture and say, hey, sorry, the picture's blurry, but we were having so much fun. There are ways that you can use that as well. But thanks for that tip from whoever shared that at our little retreat. You guys, we're going to dig deep into your role as a school communicator today with our guests. So let's get to it. Welcome to the show, Kaitlin and Jordan. Good to see you guys.
You too.
Hi, it's great to see you.
More of my Texas friends. You guys, Kaitlin Paonessa and Dr. Jordan Ziemer are with Abilene ISD in Texas. Before we get started, I'd just love to hear just a brief background. Now, I know we're going to get into your whole journey, but just a brief background and kind of your roles there at Abilene. So, Jordan, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm the executive director of communications for Abilene ISD here in Abilene, Texas. We like to say Abilene is 2 hours from everywhere if you're wondering where we are in Texas. So you can find us on the map, I'm sure. And then I also serve as the president-elect for TSPRO, which is the Texas School PR Association. And so we love that organization and deeply connected to it and the network there. And so that's just a little bit about me. I can share more as we go.
Okay. And how about you, Caitlin?
Yeah, so I'm Kaitlin Paonessa. I'm the Assistant Director of Communications in Abilene ISD. Have been here in Abilene for just over a year. And yeah, super happy to be here.
Oh my gosh, you've just been there a little over a year, but we're going to get into that journey. So, before we keep going, Caitlin, could you just tell us a little bit about Abilene, like the size, how many schools, and then what your communications department looks like?
Yeah, so Abilene, we like to say we're mid-sized but mighty. It's the biggest community around this area of Texas, unless, like Jordan said, you want to drive 2 hours. We have 23 campuses at this moment and several schools of choice mixed in there. And then our communications team is a team of six or five and a half. And
Okay.
so Jordan and I lead the team, and then we have a full-time digital communication specialist who helps us with our videography and graphic design. We have a part-time post-retirement life event specialist in our department. And then we also manage AISD Live, which is our live productions department. And so we have a veteran employee in our department who's been with Abilene ISD for over 30 years and does a really fabulous job of leading that section of our work.
Okay, there's always something interesting that pops up. Jordan, how did you land on like retired part-time event person?
Yeah.
So that's a great question. Her name is Terry Hall, and I have no problem giving her a shout out. She is, you ever hear someone talk about like the personality hire in the office? She's a little more than that for us. She's like our office totem. And so Terry was a longtime teacher in Abilene ISD, taught for decades at Cooper High School, which is one of our two big comprehensive high schools. And Terry always had kind of an aptitude and a love for technology and was particularly interested in websites. And so years ago, when she decided, okay, I've had enough of this teaching gig, but I still want to stay in education, she was friends with the former communications director and wound up actually starting in the department before Caitlin or I either one got here. And she started as a web specialist and did some other work related to website design and content management, and she still does some of that for us as well. But Terry also has a really great aptitude for putting on awesome events, and so we just tapped into that skill set with her as well. But the thing about Terry that everybody should know is her importance to us doesn't really have anything to do with what she actually does every day. It's the institutional knowledge that she keeps in our department. She keeps us connected to the historicity of Abilene ISD. And for a communications team, that is worth its weight in gold. And so we love her because she loves us back and is just a fantastic person to work with. She has 11 grandkids. They all call her Tootie. And so that's a name that we also remember her by just because she's also kind of like our Tootie, like she kind of takes care of us too. But again, the main value she provides, and you ask me why is she such an important to this game? How do we land on that? It's that historical institutional knowledge. It's almost like jet fuel sometimes for our effort to understand something before we create something. And so she's a super integral part to our team. And I've been in many budget and staffing meetings where I have said I will stand on this table and fight you for Terry Hall because that has been again a kind of a crucial component of our ability to be successful in an institution that dates back to 1881. Right, I'm in year six here in Abilene ISD. 1881 is a lot longer than 6 years ago. And so when you have somebody on your team who brings in decades of knowledge from all of that history, and you don't have that, it adds a component sometimes I think we miss. And so Terry's really important for a lot of reasons.
That's awesome. So Kaitlin, with social media and 23 campuses, can you just kind of explain how you guys approach social media, what kind of pages you run, and who's responsible?
Yeah, so in our department, we run just the district channels. So we have a district Facebook page, an Instagram page. We have a YouTube channel. I think that's it. Am I leaving anything out, Jordan? LinkedIn as well. And
Okay.
so that's the those are the channels that we run, and then we provide support to departments who may run their own channels. For example, our CTE department has their own Facebook and Instagram presence, and then we provide support to campuses as well. And
Okay.
so I'm sure there are other school districts who are going through this too. Right now, what we're trying to do is get all of our campus pages on one business portfolio through the Meta Business Suite. And so that has been our journey over the last few months, and in a way to try to bring everybody together and just be able to manage administration. And once we kind of get that step finalized, I think we'll really lean into just being thought partners for campuses on the content that they create, and being able to just navigate any issues that they might run into with their social media channels.
Okay. And Kaitlin, you said 23 campuses. Do you have an approximate number? I mean, I'm assuming maybe you're growing in number of students.
Yes, it's about 14,500, I
Okay.
believe. I
Okay.
think we're right under that 15,000 mark.
Okay, that just helps me. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So today we're focusing on a special topic because I got the pleasure of sitting in a session with both of you back at TSPRA and walked in and it was called Changing Lanes, Staying Sane, Navigating Career Transitions into School PR. And I think everybody's got a story, and you guys have two really unique ones. So, Jordan, why don't you start by sharing your story into school PR?
Oh man, this is such a good question. And it's the question that drove us to build this presentation and present it at TSPRO, which is we talk a lot at these conferences about how to execute well and how to implement and then evaluate work. And what we don't always talk about is how did we get to the work? Not how did we arrive at a particular plan, but how did we actually get here? And that's a conversation Kaitlin and I had in our office as we've been working together over the past year plus now. And we just kind of realized we took two very different paths to this work in Abilene ISD. Before I got to Abilene ISD, I was the assistant director here. So I was in Caitlin's role before I was promoted. And then I was also, before that, I was the director of communications and marketing in a San Antonio, Texas area ISD. But before all of that, there's a whole previous me. And that's kind of what we started talking about is like there was a whole me that existed before all of that professionally. And I had to find a new version of me here in this work in school communications. And so for me personally, what that means about me, the easiest way to say it is I'm a recovering academic. I have, you can see actually poking in the screen here, I have lots of fancy pieces of paper on the wall. And what I have been grappling with as I have now spent, almost a decade in school PR is that those pieces of paper don't validate. They might open a door for you, but they don't validate you and create they don't create a person, right? They give you connections to certain things, but it's up to you to build yourself to capitalize on what connections are available to you because of those pieces of paper you might have hanging around. And so essentially, I fell in love. In short, when I got into college, I fell in love with the pursuit of a knowledge in an academic sense. I found out that I was actually really good at doing college, if that makes sense. Um, then I reached the mountaintop. I got my DR at the beginning of my name, and I struggled really badly with imposter syndrome, like with what am I doing up here? What am I supposed to be? I got these credentials that were the goalposts, but once I reached the goal, it's like, oh, there's a whole life ahead of me. And I don't really know what I'm supposed to do with the rest of that. And then what really put me in existential crisis mode career wise was being asked to help with a practical PR question by a student I was supposed to be advising. So, in a nutshell, the student was my, Dr. Jordan Ziemer professor, and the student came to my office and asked me for help with a project, but they didn't want to help, they didn't want help completing the academic project. They wanted help with giving practical advice to the group of people they were doing their research with. They had a group that was struggling to answer a public relations question practically, and they wanted to help with that, not just write their paper. And I realized I got nothing for you. I got a bunch of head knowledge. But I have many books. I could pull any one of a number of beautiful books off of a shelf. And this student did not want that. They were asking me genuinely, what should I do? How should I actually encourage them to take a path, chart a practical path forward? And so that set off a search in me for something meaningful that felt more impactful to the people around me in my local community. And it turns out, I'm blessed. I come from a family of public school educators. I'm, married to a teacher who's now an assistant principal, and I turned to my family and I was like, I, okay, I'm struggling with this. I don't really know who I am. I also feel like I don't have anything practical to offer professionally. Like, what do I do? And my family was like, welcome to public education, right? Welcome to K-12 education. And what I found was purpose in the practice. And that's what I talk about a lot with my friends is the purpose I was looking for, I didn't find in the knowledge I had accumulated. I found it in the daily practice of this work that's grounded in helping local school communities understand what their kids are doing every day. And that's something there's something so fundamental to the life of a community about its school district, and being connected to that, I think it's really difficult to not feel that you're purposeful in your practice. And then more importantly, I also, if this is something we'll talk about more today, I also found a professional community that I was really looking for. Academia, there's tons of value, and I don't want anybody to think I'm denigrating my colleagues and peers in academia. But one of the things that I noticed, at least in my own journey, this is all me, right? This is just my story. One of the things I noticed was a silo effect, where I tend to be isolated a lot, whether it's going out for that grant or writing that research paper or whatever. It was just me. It was all me, right? You're kind of you're just on a ship. You're an army of one, and you've got to make all that happen. And it's difficult, I found, in that context to build a real professional community, a practice-based community as well. And that's the other thing I found in school PR was, I mentioned TSPRA.
Hmm.
I showed up at my first TSPRA conference like a month in to my school PR journey, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know, what do I do? And what I found was a bunch of practitioners who so deeply care about helping schools, school communities, whether it's through a connections lens, a community engagement lens, a marketing lens, a social media lens, or whatever lens they're approaching the work with, they so deeply care and feel grounded in the communities that they work to support every day. I think it's kind of almost like impossible for school PR folks not to want to reach out and pull folks in who show a desire to be part of that because it's so missional. And so that's what I found was in addition to purposeful practice, I also found a group of practitioners who were like, get in this thing. We want you here. You are welcome. We're excited you're here. In fact, at the time, the president of TSPRA, who I didn't know anything about, like I had no, I guess, natural respect for like authority structures in these big organizations. So I just walked up to the president and I was like, "Hi, I'm Jordan. I don't know what I'm doing here." And after talking to me for a few minutes, I'll never forget her comment to me was, "Yeah, we're going to keep you. You should stay." And I'll never forget that because that little simple comment that, I've mentioned to her since, and she doesn't necessarily remember that little comment was so meaningful to me because that's exactly what I had been searching for, was for somebody to just say, you're part of this thing and it's bigger than you, and that's a good thing.
Hmm.
So that's my journey. As I started out on this, I'm going to go climb the rare air of being all alone on the academic mountaintop. Then I got there and looked around and was like, where is everybody? And I had to climb back down to the ground floor and access that practical rooted work, community rooted work. And that's where I found my home. So that's that's my story in a nutshell.
I love it. And we're getting deep today with all of this. I loved how you started that, Jordan. I've starred and circled purpose in the practice. And I've fallen in love with this community too. Hey, who was that president? Can you name that person or not?
I sure can. It's Monica Falconberry, and
Okay,
if you know her, she is a legend in Texas school PR.
yes.
She's long time communications officer for Northside ISD in San Antonio, and Monica is. I just don't have enough good things to say about her. She is one of those people who so fundamentally understands that there is tremendous value in doing work that uplifts the community around you, and that matters to her. And she doesn't hesitate to help somebody like me make that next step. And I think that's you know whether it was luck or a purposeful connection, or whatever you want to call it. My intersection with Monica, she was exactly the person I needed at that moment because I didn't know what I didn't know, and she knew that about me, but it didn't put her off about me. It certainly didn't intimidate or scare her about me.
Hmm.
She's just so professional and practical that her approach to me immediately was to see my value, and I think that's the thing that has made her that legendary person in school communications. Is she sees the value in everybody who enters the room, and is willing to help that person see it and capitalize on it.
Yeah.
And so I'm so thankful for Monica. And if Monica, if you're listening, I love you. I can't thank you enough. My first real true mentor in Monica Falconberry.
Well, I'm glad she said we'll keep you, Jordan, because we are all learning from you today, and now you're president-elect yourself. Who knew that that was going to happen? All
Not
right,
me.
yeah. Caitlin, now what about your journey into school PR?
Yeah, that I'm listening to Jordan tell his story, and we've talked about this so many times, but every time he talks about his story, I remember all of the threads that are similar, even though we took very different paths. For me, I'm a boomerang school PR employee. Came into school PR, left school PR, and came back again. And part of the reason I'm able to be back is because of that network that Jordan mentioned in TSPRA. But I graduated from Texas Tech University, and I have to find a way to include that in every conversation with my Aggie boss. Just have to put that one in there for you, especially Jordan. Um, but my degree from Texas Tech was in agricultural communications, which I have to explain in every job interview or professional interaction I have with people. But I had no intention of ever working in the ag industry. I actually wanted to work in the music industry. And so I did an internship with country music television in Nashville. I worked for an independent music artist management company in Austin right after graduation and did social media for some country music artists. And my kind of moment, Jordan said his moment was whenever he interacted with a student. My moment came in an ICU room at Children's Medical Center in Dallas because I was there with my newborn daughter and was suddenly navigating both trying to be a professional and being a mom at the same time. And that, if any other moms who are listening know that that just opens up a whole new chapter for you and makes you look at things differently. And I had already been kind of thinking I was ready to do something new. And I think that the call there was that purpose that Jordan mentioned. It was feeling like I wanted to work with purpose. I wanted to do something that felt like I was giving back to the communities that where I lived. And so I applied for a communication specialist job at Leander ISD, sitting in that hospital room, and ended up doing a video interview that I thought that I bombed absolutely. But what I didn't know is that Veronica Sofer and Jennifer Bailey were the ones who were reviewing those video interviews. And they invited me in and offered me the position. And I just found my home there in school PR. I was learning from two just boss ladies who also happened to be mothers themselves. Veronica had two young girls at the time, and I saw her commanding a room as an executive and also leaving early to go pick her kids up from school. And I thought, okay, I can do this. Like this feels like I belong. Spent a couple years in Leander ISD and then wanted to kind of move up and just grow my professional skill set. So I worked for the American Heart Association for a year. And Jennifer Bailey happened to be moving at that same time. She had worked for Georgetown ISD. When she was vacating that position, she told me about it. And so encouraged me to apply. And then I joined the team at Georgetown. And my first day on the job was in mid-December, right before Christmas break of 2019. And so the year that I spent in Georgetown was the COVID year in school PR. And so once again, it was a very abnormal chapter of my life and my coworkers' lives. And again, I found just a community of people that surrounded me and encouraged me and made me feel like, once again, this is exactly where I'm meant to be. And so my next move came after another health issue with my family. I had my second born, my son Parker, who also was had to have an open heart surgery like my daughter. And after that, we decided let's move closer to family and moved to Abilene, where I worked for Goodwill West Texas as their director of communications and marketing for 2.5 years. And then lo and behold, once again, Jen Bailey, who's like my fairy godmother of school PR, happened to be in a Zoom meeting with Jordan, a TSPRA committee of some kind. And Jordan mentioned that he had a position that was going to be opening up in his department. And the thing about Abilene is like school PR jobs are few and far between. We're surrounded by lots of smaller communities, including the one where I grew up, which is small enough to not need school PR or communications employees or not be able to afford them at least. And so Jen Bailey said, "Hey, you do know Kaitlin Paonessa is in your backyard, right?" And so he reached out to me, and that was December of 2022, right? Or 23? How long has it been? 23? I started in 23. Yes. What is time? And anyway, that started here February 19th, 2024 was my first day on the job. And so been here for a year now and don't plan on leaving anytime soon.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm impressed that you like applied while you were at the hospital with your daughter, kind of looking for a change. And
Going through an existential crisis for sure.
yeah, and then again, the theme of connections and community and all of that. Love that. Now, most of my listeners have also transitioned, like they didn't, or they might be thinking about going into this. I actually had a gentleman reach out and he like kind of found out about this world because he started listening to the podcast. And so I think Seth, if you're listening, Seth, talking about you right now. So that's awesome to get people introduced that this kind of work exists. But what advice would you give to someone thinking about entering this kind of work? Jordan, do you have any advice that you might give that person that's thinking about it?
Sure. I would say so. I'll talk about this from, just again, this is my lens, right? And
Mhm.
so I encourage everybody to stay connected with yourself, right? Find yourself, find where you're at, right? But some things I've learned that have helped me enter into not just school PR, but public education. I encourage you, if you're thinking about this work, to realize it is deeply connected to the work of education, K-12 education, not just in maybe your local state context, but in our national context. And maybe you have I'm sure you may have some international listeners who work in their local school communities too. But education is not just a thing happening in your town. It's a thing happening at a very broad level in a very professional way. So I just encourage you to think about the fact that going to work for the school down the street is a perspective that may not help when your job is going to be to help connect that school to knowledge outside of it, right? One of the things we do is help our communities understand their context. So right now, Kaitlin and I are working together with Julie Thanum and Justin Deering and our friends at CISO Communications to help educate our community about its financial reality in context to the broader financial realities of the state. So as you're thinking about this industry, think bigger than just the schoolhouse down the street. That is I grew up going down to a school down the street, and I think a lot of us did, right? And so we tend to think about it, we tend to identify with that vision of what our districts are, but this is a very professional industry, and this is a very professional function that our industry needs to view itself that way. And so, with that in mind, the best thing I could share with somebody who's trying to enter into not just school communications, but the professional field of education is to get humble, to get humble. Find the ability to realize that starting with coachability and humility are professional values that play well in this field. Not because you're trying to take advantage of anybody, but because there is so much to know. There's so many different areas of expertise, whether it's student services or federal programs or curriculum and instruction. And as my friend Danielle Clark in Harris County likes to say, communications, other than the superintendent, the only role that has the ability to professionally interact with all of that is the communications role. And that requires a level of humility. It requires a level of a willingness to learn. So the best thing you can do is find a coach. If you're looking at getting into this district, if you want to get humble and get coachable, find a coach first. And so don't be afraid to reach out. Go look at a school district near you that you know has a communications office and reach out to that communications officer. I promise we don't bite. We're just regular people trying to do a big job for a place we care about, right? And the communications officers I've interacted with are universally willing to help, especially people who show an interest in the field. So don't be afraid to reach out and say, I'm thinking about this work. I bring this to the table. Can you give me some advice? How do I get started? Where could I look? Find that coach who will work with you. I actually joined TSPRA before I had a school PR job in K-12 education. So when I was looking for the work, I found this little organization of practice and was like, I'm just going to join them online, right? And through that, I started to make some little connections that built up to my big connections at conference in Monica, like I mentioned earlier. But find a coach and someone around you who's willing to help you with that. And then a couple more pieces of advice, and then I'll turn it back over to you, Andrea. With all that in mind, listen before you talk. I'm a notorious yapper, but if I can figure out how to listen, so can you, right? When you reach out to that coach and you're asking for help to understand the field and the context that it's within professionally, listen, soak it in, soak it in. Don't worry about proving yourself. Worry about figuring out what it is that the field can offer you. Start there, and I have more that we can, more thoughts on this we can talk about later, but I just encourage great listening, great professional listening. Learn as much as you can and soak it up. And then last thing is for those of you who actually do make the transition, right? Just a note for those of you who are thinking, well, okay, I've made my jump and I'm listening today because I'm also wondering if, I ruined my life. You didn't, right? Welcome. We're so excited you're here. We need you. But the best piece of advice I ever got when I actually got my first school communications job was to ask why the fence was built before I started tearing it down. So that's old rancher talk, right? But what that piece of advice means is sometimes you're going to come up on a fence line, and a professional fence line might be an old process in place. It might be a way of doing things, a way we've always done it. And before you get to work ripping that fence out of the ground and building a new fence, slow down and ask why that fence is there. that will do two things. One, it will help you build an internal connection with somebody who might have put that fence up. And then two, it'll give you the opportunity to have the greatest professional impact because instead of just tearing up roots, you understand the moves that actually have to happen to get to the best outcome. So that's advice for those of you who you may be transitioning in, you're bringing in a whole different lens like I was. You're gung ho about making changes. And that's how I was when I started. I was like, I'm going to get in here and I'm going to change a bunch of stuff and I'm going to make it all better immediately. And I had a good friend who just pulled me aside and said, wait a second, before you rip up that fence, before you tear down that fence line, before you move goalposts somewhere, before you change process, ask why that was put into place before. Get to the root of the problem and then also build a healthy relationship. Show that person who might have put that process you think needs to change in place that you respect them enough to listen to them, that you're humble enough to be coached by them, even if you don't agree with what they're doing or you think there's a better way to get through it. Slow down and ask why before you start making changes, especially if you're transitioning into the field. What you might find is that the person who helped who built the fence in the first place was like, "Yeah, I don't really know why I did it this way. I was just trying to solve a problem." And you have a chance to become a partner with that person and create a better solution to the problem they were trying to solve before, instead of making them feel like you didn't care about them and stepped all over their toes.
Right.
So those are just a few initial pieces of advice that I'd have for those of you who are out there trying to make this work.
I love it. Wrote those down. Um, Kaitlin, what pieces of advice in addition, maybe you agree with some of what he shared. Do you have additional pieces of advice for somebody getting into this work or thinking about it?
Yeah, I was hoping Jordan was going to share the don't take a fence down before you ask why it was built quote, because I love that. And I think that's definitely was my experience too, was basically just get comfortable asking questions.
Mm.
Ask you, maybe you're a team of one and you come in and you don't have a team member to ask questions, ask the administrators. Jordan's absolutely right. The thing that blew my mind whenever I came into this work was how large of a network school operations are. That all of the different people who have a role in making sure that your campuses are running smoothly every day, and ask them questions, get to understand how this business works. I'd also say to get comfortable doing things that you have never done before, especially if you're a team of one. But like in Leander, it was a pretty big team that I stepped into, and I still was encouraged to flex my skill set into areas that I might not have used before. It's one of the things that I love about this work is that you can really be a professional generalist and do a little bit of everything. And you should be excited about that and have that opportunity to do social media and graphic design and writing. I'd also, encourage you, depending on where you're coming from, like what professional organization, remember that our job is public relations, whether you're on social media and you're writing content or you're writing a story about something, an accomplishment that a student had, on one of their campuses. It's always an opportunity to sell the school district and sell the work of public education, and to every celebration is an opportunity to lean into that public relations lens and with your community. But yeah, I'd say just get comfortable asking questions, get comfortable getting out of your comfort zone, and then get in touch with your local SPRA, whatever that is. That we just had one of our colleagues down the street in a school district join our industry. And the first thing I asked was, have you joined TSPRA yet? Because whether it's being on an online webinar like Jordan did, whether it's reaching out to a colleague and just getting connected in that way, I loved that. Another piece of advice that I got in my first school PR job was don't recycle. Like you can recycle. You don't have to recreate the wheel every time. And so sharing is caring in school PR. And I love that. You can borrow from what other neighboring school districts are doing, what school districts out of the state are doing. Look at those gold star winners at the INSPRA level or at the Texas, your state level. And then try to replicate that and make that fit your community. There are so many opportunities like that out there. And I think that it's really unique in our industry to be able to have the opportunity. And it's not something that you have in a lot of other professional industries.
Barbara Hunter, the executive director of NSPRA, the National School Public Relations Association, calls that admire and acquire.
Yes, yeah.
So I love that one. I always give her credit, but yeah, you can do that because yes, in some cases we've got districts right next to each other and we're competing a little bit, but we're just want what's best for these kids and to show them the opportunities we have, and so we don't have to recreate the wheel. Um, what do you still struggle with the most, and maybe what has helped? Because this is a stressful, like you are on display, your work's on display. So, Kaitlin, you just talked about get comfortable being uncomfortable, which is fine. But then it's like, dude, I'm just doing this for the first time and now it's in front of everybody. So, do each of you have one thing that maybe you still struggle with the most and what you've tried to do to help it? Jordan, do you want to help start with that?
Sure. Okay. I will call back to you asked for one. I'm going to give you two because that's I can't help myself. Is that
It's okay.
okay? Can you you get a
Absolutely,
bonus?
it's okay.
Call it a 1+1, so it's like a free bonus.
Yes.
Okay. So a callback to the imposter syndrome that I mentioned earlier is discounting what I already know as a career transitioner. That is a huge challenge that I think a lot of career transitioners face. And so, in addition to being willing to own my blind spots, owning your blind spots, my encouragement to to those of you listening is to own your value too.
Mm.
If you're transitioning in from a different field, you are not valueless. You're not starting at value zero and having to build it up. And that is something that I believed about myself and really struggle with still. When I find myself in executive level conversations, especially if you're listening and you're at the leadership table, it doesn't matter what leadership table, you're at a table of leaders. Do not discount what you already bring into the room. That is not going to help anybody. And the reality is, when you know yourself and own your value, and just sit down and right do us a little self assessment. Right, what do I already know how to do? What can I bring? What do I already know how to accomplish? That as excellent, what that's going to do is help break down knowledge silos. Education is like any large industry in that there are knowledge silos where education has convinced itself that it knows the best way to do a certain thing. And maybe it doesn't. And maybe you are the person who can add to your purposeful practice also a healthy mix of just saying, what about this way to do it? Right? Um, and sometimes what that looks like is asking again a callback to Danielle Clark here. If she's listening, Danielle, you know what I'm about to say. Sometimes that just looks like asking why, being comfortable, being willing to ask why do we do something, and that gives you the opportunity to bring the value you already have to the table because the answer you get might be, I don't know. And then you can say, well, here's a thing that I know, right? Maybe you come from the world of, maybe you were in, corporate marketing, right? Maybe you're coming to this from news media, right? That's very common, right? We have our friends in the news media wind up over in school PR. Bring your skill set to the table and don't discount what you already know. And then my bonus one is, I still struggle with, and I think this is just universal, I think maybe, but saying yes when I can while saying no when I have to.
Mm.
Um, um, my goodness, I am bad at saying yes way too much and not asking why are we doing that enough. And that is kind of a side effect, I think, of that willingness to learn and be coached that I was talking about earlier. Is once you learn and you're in the know, then people are like, oh wait, now I can count on you. So here's stuff to do. So that's not a bad thing, right? But bring alongside that healthy professional curiosity, a willingness to say no when you have to.
Mhm.
And two good ways to do that. Again, get comfortable asking, why are we doing this again? So you have that person maybe who's around the corner from you in the office who thinks making a video is the answer to every problem. Maybe it's time to sit down with that person and just gently ask them, why do you think we need videos? And let them not be able to explain that to you and like let them struggle with that a little bit and then gently
Mm.
let that give you the door to sit down and say, okay, now can we have a more critical conversation about the tactics we choose to achieve a certain strategy. And so again, that's about that pairing the willingness to learn with an ability to question gently and say no professionally when you absolutely have to. And a huge part of that, by the way, is having that mentor ready to go. I was about to say have your Rolodex full, but that would have dated me, Andrea. So I'm just going to say having your contact list, um, that person who you can reach out to and say, I've been asked to do this thing and I don't know how to say this is not the best idea. And again, that person for me now, as I mentioned her, this is the third time, but Danielle Clark is that person for me. So I will call her regularly and say, Danielle, somebody asked me to do this thing. How do I navigate this? Because my comms spidey senses are saying, not sure about this. And that coach then who's seen it all, done it all, been a president of multiple SPRAs, and has a big time job as a CCO down in Harris County, will look at me through the camera and say, okay, here's how you step through that difficult conversation, ask these critical questions to get to a better outcome. So in summary, don't discount what you already know. Bring your value to the table and say and know when you got to say no. Say no when you have to. And your network can help you have those critical conversations when you're afraid the no might rub some feathers, but it's the best thing for you and your team or your office.
Yes. I feel like this is a little bit of counseling sessions for everybody. So this is going to be an episode that's like good for your school PR soul, which I love.
Yeah.
So
Everybody needs a one-on-one with Jordan Ziemer. I will say
yeah.
that.
That
It is good for the soul.
Yeah, and it took me a while to get you guys on the podcast. You'll laugh at this, Jordan, because I grabbed your business card when I was there, and somehow it ended up in my bathroom drawer. I don't know why, but I kept seeing your name. I'm just like, when are we going to have them on the podcast? And today's the day, so it's good. Kaitlin, what would you say is your biggest struggle still, and how do you kind of navigate that?
I kind of giggled when you asked this and when you asked this question first, Andrea, and looked at Jordan because I know that he knows what it is. And it is a testament to continuous learning because hope way 10 years post grad and I'm still learning this. It's that struggling to not try to do it all. That's the thing that I struggle with.
Yep.
I love that I get to work in so many different areas in this work, but I also know that there's always something to do. There's always something to improve. And I remember when I started this job, Jordan, his advice for me, because he has many Jordanisms, as you will see after you listen to this podcast. But one of them is take one bite of the elephant at a time.
Hmm.
And I was very fortunate to come into this role and have my boss tell me, hey, there's a lot of work to do. You do not have to do it all at once. I didn't listen. But we also had at the time last summer, we were launching a website. We were going through a communications tool transition. I think I did a professional development presentation my second day on the job and was ready to start a content calendar right away. And so I knew there was a lot of work to do and what I had to learn, and I'm still learning over the past year is to set personal boundaries for myself to know when to shut it off. I really couldn't do that without Jordan's help, to be honest, because he has been known to come by my office and flip off my lights and tell me to go eat lunch out of this building. And it's something, it's a continuous, like daily reminder to keep it in perspective. And the other thing that is really helpful in Jordan and to have a boss who will say to help you keep that perspective, who will remind you, hey, I know you feel like you have this much to accomplish, but look at what you've already done. Look at what you've already accomplished and just the monumental changes that you've made in that time. And so maybe somebody else can relate to that. I'm also an Enneagram 3, if anybody knows what that is, which is the achiever. And so I want you to, Andrea.
Yes.
You get this. You get this. Like last summer, there would be nights where I was combing through individual web pages late at night because I did not want to launch our new website without going through each individual page. And that was an extreme, unhealthy version of an Enneagram 3. But there's a lot of work to do. And that's also what makes this work so exciting to me, is that there's so much improvement. And I know here in Abilene, we're right in the middle of that. It's been a transformative year for our school district. Part of that is because of a new leader or a new superintendent in Abilene ISD, but it's also just time to grow with the changes in public education in our country right now. And that makes this work even more exciting. And even though there's a lot to do, it's nice to know that we're kind of all in this together. And if you can have that person who helps you keep that perspective and reminds you to turn off your lights and go to lunch every once in a while, doesn't have to be your boss. Maybe it's another administrator that works in the school district with you. Maybe it's that colleague that you meet through TSPRA, or your other SPRA across the country. That's really valuable. And that's what's helping me as I continue to try to work through that struggle.
Yeah, I think a lot of listeners can relate to that because there is always something to do, especially when you're just starting out. You're like, you got a lot of ideas. You got to
Yeah.
kind of own where you're at. And it's easy to compare because you see people, districts around you, or, but it's just take one step at a time. Like eat that elephant one bite at a time. And then within even 3 months, you're going to look back and be like, whoa, look at all what we've accomplished. But I think everybody listening struggles with that as well. So your advice was kind of building in those personal boundaries and recognizing how far you've come, but then also really having that support from leadership. And not everybody has that. I've had people reach out to me where they don't have that. They're expected to be at every single event. They're creating a big old video for every single big game. It's just really unrealistic. And I've had to give the advice that this isn't the only job in town. Even though it might seem like it, like this may not be a healthy fit, and you may need to look at other opportunities. And in some cases, the people that don't understand end up leaving the district, right? Or something, and somebody that comes in. But Jordan, what would you say to that person who's just like, yeah, that's great. I want Jordan to come be my boss, but that's probably not going to happen. So what advice would you have to that person that's just like overworked, overstressed, but no accountability or person that understands that at their district?
Great
So
question.
yeah, that's a great question. So I'm an Enneagram 2, and so what that means is that I will absolutely pour all of myself out to help somebody, and then do nothing to take care of myself. And so what I would say to that person who wants me to be their boss is call me and I will talk to you, because I have no ability to say no when it comes to helping someone. That's just like literally how I'm wired. That is such a great question. And if you're wrestling with that, the first thing I would tell you is I've been there. I've been there I've worked for, this is my seventh superintendent. I've had multiple bosses who weren't superintendents. In all of that, I have worked for people who did not support me personally or professionally. And were more than happy to make me feel like I was a means to their end. And if you're in that space, I have been there, and I understand how draining and taxing and depressing and defeating, how deflating that can feel when you are striving to accomplish what you've been asked to do or what you believe should be done, and there's not recognition or support on the other end of it. And so this is what I would tell you. What I would tell you is you are not, if you're in that position, you are not wrong to have high expectations of your leaders. It is not wrong to have high expectations for your own support. And one of the challenges I think we face is school communications and marketing folks, school, whether you're in comms, PR, marketing, or some subversion of it, we are doers. We are achievers. We love it. We love to look at our work in lights and say, I made that. Doesn't necessarily mean a lot of us want to be behind the camera. I'm very much I want to be behind the camera person, but I love to see what we make up in lights. And sometimes the thing that gets lost in the request to make something cool, the making of something cool, and the cool thing being up in lights is you. And you are not wrong to have high expectations of the people who are putting those demands on you, to help you become a better leader. So Simon Sinek likes to say, it's my favorite quote. It's literally looking at my whiteboard in my office. It is posted on my whiteboard right now, that the responsibility of leadership is to create more leaders. Whether you're in an office of one, you feel like you're at the leadership table or not, you are a leader in your field, and you should have the expectation that your leaders will help be creating a leader in you. And you're not wrong to be willing to turn around to them and say, can we have a critical conversation about how I'm feeling right now. And I would also encourage you with this. Your value is not in what you do. And I know that's gonna put a smile on Kaitlin Paonessa's face because I say this to her all the time. There is a lot to do. That is not where your value lies. Your value is in who you are. You bring value to the table because you are a person with values and skills and all kinds of amazing things about you. You have a story that you bring to the table. That is where your value lies. And you're allowed to have leaders who understand that your value is not in what you're accomplishing. It's in who you are. So my advice to you is this. My advice to you, Caitlin mentioned, she said a phrase earlier, getting comfortable being uncomfortable.
Mm.
Sometimes you reach the breaking point in your career where it's just time for you to sit down with your leader and say, I feel really empty. And I don't know what to do to fill myself with the kind of encouragement I need to continue. Um, and that expectation that your leadership will create more leaders is something you shouldn't just practice. It's something, again, you should expect. So I'll give you one more piece of advice too. Um, in addition to the don't tear down a fence before you ask why it was built thing, the other thing that I got when I started in school PR was I was like, to my dad. So I'm going to give my dad, the OG Dr. Ziemer, a shout out. But my dad is a longtime teacher and administrator in schools. And I called him to tell him that I got my first school job and I was super excited about it. And he thought for a long time. And I was like, what are you thinking about right now? And he said, I want to ask you a question. And this is just brutal honesty time from a guy who had done it all and seen it all and still has. He said, if you died tonight, what would your school district do tomorrow? And the answer to that question is they would be really sad. They would think about you a lot and they would take care of your family and they would keep right on doing the work that they've asked you to do anyway. That doesn't mean don't feel committed to your work. It doesn't mean don't be engaged with your work. It doesn't mean you don't pour it out when you have to. It doesn't mean you chase after the best outcome, right? It doesn't mean it means that you understand that your school district is a mission that you're on, but it's not the only important thing in your life. And you have to find balance. You have to find a healthy way to balance the commitments you're being asked to make with the rest of your life that needs you, whether it's your family, it's your spouse, it's your kids, whoever else is out there that needs you as well. So that's the other thing I would encourage you with is to have a healthy dose of perspective that this the organization you're working for that's asking a lot of you, right? At the end of the day, they have a mission to accomplish. You need to pour into that mission as much as you can. But when it starts to ask so much of you that you feel totally withered and empty, it's time to step back and ask those around you, hey, this is how I'm feeling. And I don't know what to do with that. And is it okay for me to have the expectation for leaders to create a leader in me? So last thing on this, I know there's lots of thoughts, but I have so many thoughts on this particular topic. I could go on and on about it. But so last thing is find that person in your organization who you can trust to have this conversation with. So I have that person here in Abilene ISD. I won't name that person here because there's some confidential things we get to talk about, right? But I have that person. I have a person who's not in my team, doesn't work in my department, who I can go to and say, "Hey, here's how I'm feeling." And that person regularly asks me three questions that I now ask my team. How are you doing? How can I help you? And where are you winning? So practice those questions and find somebody who's willing to ask you those questions. So those are just a collection of thoughts, Andrea, that don't necessarily create one coherent answer. But the main thing is A, have high expectations of your leadership to help you. B, healthy dose of perspective that your value is not in what you're doing, it's in who you are. And then C, find that person in your district who's not on your team, who's willing to pour into you. And ask them, just ask them, hey, I need this person who can pour into me. Will you be that person? That's a practice I've asked, that just direct question, and it's led to heavy returns in my life. So that's probably way more than you wanted. But
No,
but
what I'm
I,
hearing though,
it,
Jordan, is you got like you common thread there is like not being afraid to respectfully advocate for yourself and your work. And it's making me think part of the reason that I was applying for a job in the ICU in way back in the day is because I didn't know at that time in my young professional career how to respectfully advocate for myself and say, hey, am I going to have a job if I have to be in the hospital with my kid for 2 months? Like what is my next plan after this? How can what can I guarantee, like what can I count on in this role? And so that's what I'm hearing from you. And the other thing that I would encourage like career transitioners is you can always come back. Maybe your job is not a great fit for you right now, but school PR will welcome you back, and I'm a testament to that. So keep those relationships, keep that network, that support group that you have, and know that we'll always welcome you back.
the addendum to the story, to Caitlin's story, by the way, Andrea, is that the very first person that I sat next to in a T-Spur conference session was Jennifer Bailey. So I got to the conference. I got no idea. So I met Monica later, right? But I get to the
Mhm.
conference. I don't know what I'm doing. I go to this pre-conference session. I sit down to this lady with a Gerald ISD shirt on, and I meet Jennifer Bailey. So she became one of my, if not my earliest T-Spur friend. Okay. Years transpire. I'm in a leadership call with her, and I say to her, I don't know what to do about this problem I have. And she introduces me to Kaitlin Paonessa. And that's how it works, right? That's why throughout this call, we're encouraging you, build your network, find your people, get your coaches,
Yeah.
find the people who can build your network.
Yeah.
They are there, and you guys are going to be there. We got your contact information. What would you say is the best way to stay connected? Just to email you, or what would you say, Jordan?
For me, it's email me directly. It's jordan.ziemer@abileneisd.org. Anyone's welcome to email me at any time. I am because social media is in my world professionally, I'm one of those folks who struggles to do it personally.
Yep.
And so if you want to connect with me on social media, best way is LinkedIn, just professionally, or reluctantly X or whatever it's called now. I'm
Okay.
still pretty
Your
active
closet
there.
X user.
I am a closet X user. It's
Okay.
it's
All
not
right.
political. It's just because the platform's gotten so weird.
It has.
So,
Well,
you
we'll
know,
get your handles and your email in the show notes. How about you, Caitlin? What's the best way to stay connected to you?
Definitely email.
Okay.
Call if it's like one of those things you want to talk over the phone. Email me. Let's talk over the phone too. And then I do love LinkedIn as well.
Okay.
So love to connect with anyone there too.
Okay, we'll get there. I knew this was going to be a great long conversation, so thanks everybody for tuning in. We got Jordan on to another meeting soon. I always like to end just with your best social media tip. So, what would you say, Caitlin, is your best social media tip for schools?
Something that is also hard to do in schools, I would say, which is don't just post and forget, but to go back and see what's performing well. Um, because we do that, I know that the thing that performs the best with our community are celebrations. Our people love to celebrate one another. And so, as tempting as it is to just check that box and say, I got a piece of content posted today, take the time once a month to go back and see what resonated with your audience and replicate that.
I love it. How about you, Jordan?
mine is audience first, content second,
Mm.
always. So know where the antidote to feeling like you have to master every social media channel is to know where your audience is.
Mhm.
So do your homework, know where your audience is actually listening to you, what are they asking you for, and where. That will help you curate a mix of channels instead of feeling like you got to be a master of all. That's how we got to a mix where we don't use X very much as a district at all anymore.
Yeah.
The reason our mix is Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube is because that's where our people were listening for us.
Yeah.
So, audience first, your best content ideas are great. That comes second.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Thank you guys both so much for being so authentic and sharing. I think this is going to be an episode that everyone needs to hear, and is going to be able to relate to. I'm guessing that your emails or phone might be blown up a little bit. And then I'm so glad that I got to come to your session at Teespra and meet you guys. Very excited for your leadership, Jordan, and just your continued work, Kaitlin, with that team. We'll be sure we'll put in the Abilene's all of your social media channels as well that you can watch. But we're generating those next generation of mentors, right, to these people that are just getting into the field. And so this is a much needed topic. I hope that you guys do this again at Tees for this year. I don't know if you're thinking about it, but I think it would really be worthwhile. I know we had a kind of a small little group there, but it was very meaningful. I think you guys definitely should do it again. So just a thought.
Maybe we need like a chicken soup for the school PR soul type
Ooh,
session.
that's a good title.
Yeah, definitely. And just, I mean, these guys are in T-Spra, but other Spra chapters, how good would it be to have Jordan and Kaitlin, even if they can't join physically, to join over a webinar? I think this could be a really great conversation to have that would really benefit all of your chapters, especially because you guys lean into so much of the importance of your local community. And you guys, if you don't have a state chapter, most states do. I think there's 30 some chapters of the School Public Relations Association. Just reach out to other schools and find out who does your job. Get a little, impromptu monthly meeting, either online or in person, that you can create. Because again, this group, I mean, I had no background in this whatsoever, right? When I started, and I just hung out with really smart people, and they're so inviting. And so I love your purpose in practice. I got a purpose in the practice definitely resonates with me. And so again, thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Thanks for
Thanks for
having
having
us, Andrea.
All right, you guys, thanks for listening. If you've got some great feedback, let us know. Hopefully, this helps you, and then we'll be back next week with another great guest. So until then, you guys keep telling those stories. Bye bye.
Bye.